9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high-caliber weapons is there's simply no rational basis for it in terms of about self-protection.
He supports a ban on sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines and expanded background checks to keep guns out of the dangerous hands. He does not support a ban on the sale of all handguns.
The White House press secretary, breaking a sweat, having to clean up again after President Biden remarks that left many scratching their heads. Those latest damage control efforts come on the very same day that NBC News published a report saying that the president is, quote unquote, furious at his aides for constantly walking back his off-the-cuff comments. According to the report, quote, the so-called cleanup campaign, he has told advisors it undermines him and smothers the authenticity that fueled his rise. Worse, it feeds a Republican talking point that he's not fully in command. End of the quote. The White House issuing a statement categorically denying the report. So are they denying that they're not cleaning up, or are they denying that he's yelling at them about it? Jason Rantz, host of the Jason Rantz talk show on KTTH Talk Radio in Seattle. So which is it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I imagine at this point they're still going to gaslight the American people. So they're probably saying, well, we're not actually correcting the president. We're just clarifying some things that you guys misinterpreted. That's my guess. Because obviously the statements that are coming from President Biden, they're just patently false. I mean, they are willfully ignorant on his part, because I think he believes this kind of rhetoric is going to sway the American people. And certainly when you have a tragedy like we had in Texas, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to listen to that rhetoric, and it might connect with them even though it's completely false. And what this president has been able to get away with through his campaign and up until recently is just flat out lying or gaslighting. And for the most part, the media outside of Fox News has been willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and go along because they support his positions. Now we're starting to see a little bit of that starting to crack, because the lies are just so blatant and the quote-unquote misstatements are so over the top that they have to be corrected. But let's be clear, his misstatements get way more coverage than the roughback will ever get. So mission accomplished for him.
That is a sad and often very true statement. So it's interesting because the president seems to have a shortness of aptitude sometimes when he steps before the microphone. And, you know, days after Uvalde, Texas, which you just acknowledged, if he had to talk politics and he had to talk guns, he also has to know that north of 30% of NRA members are Democratic voters. Like, does he not even have any idea who the potential audience might be for him politically? Anyway, we'll move on. Go ahead, make a quick comment, and we'll move on.
No, I was just saying there's such a disconnect between the Democratic Party that is vocal on guns and the actual Democrat base. Yeah, the progressives don't like guns, but Democrats in general take a much different view. They're against just blanket bans. They do want reasonable gun control, but they disagree on what reasonable means than what the Democratic Party right now considers reasonable.
But we all agree what the facts are. And handguns were not on the list of anything being talked about in any of these bills. So I don't know where he got it, just out of whole cloth. A New York Post op-ed argues gaffe-prone blowhard Biden is no Churchill. Rarely have you seen so few to have to clarify so much, adding Biden is less flagrant than Trump. He's not firing top officials on Twitter or making pronouncements based on the last thing he saw on TV, but he's also less entertaining. Biden imagines himself the adult in the room at the same time that he routinely beclowns himself and makes potentially consequential verbal missteps. This is indeed the authentic Biden, but it's not inspiring, praiseworthy, or reassuring. Ouch. Jason.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can sort of compare what the reality is now when the media is not giving him the coverage they gave him as far as the incompetency goes during the campaign. It was really easy when you had President Trump out there giving ammunition and fuel basically to the left to focus on, so the attention wasn't on all the gaffes that Biden was committing. And remember, you know, when he was being pushed as the nominee and as the next inevitable president, it was about calming things down, going going back to normal, getting that adult in the room who's going to take care of the situation. But unfortunately, we've had way more problems under Biden than we did under Trump. And so now people, I have to imagine, are wondering, well, maybe it was worth putting up with some of the angry tweets in the middle of the night, because at least at the end of the day, mothers can feed their kids, and we weren't going through the economic crises that we are right now.
All right, we'll move to this. Former UPenn swimmer Lia Thomas is hitting back at critics after backlash over her Division I swimming title back in March. She was the first transgender athlete to take that title and set a record in the process. Critics call it unfair, and even some have her own teammates speaking out against her, competing against biological women. But they say they supported her decision to transition. Thomas says you can't have it both ways.
You can't go halfway and be like, I support trans women and trans people, but only to a certain point. Trans women are not a threat to women's sports. I'm not a medical expert, but there's a lot of variation among cis female athletes. There's cis women who are very tall and very muscular and have more testosterone than another cis woman, and should that then also disqualify them?
Well, he was right about that. She was right about that she's not a doctor, she's not a scientist. Jason.
Yeah, she's not a doctor, and she's also not a biological woman, and I think that matters. There is no conflict with supporting transgender people and their right to identify however they want and be free from any sort of discrimination and just meanness, frankly. But at the same time, we can't ignore the biological realities. And when it comes to the mountains of research out there, it says time and time again that a male and a female are different athletically. And when we're talking about peak athletic performance, the ones who are the professionals, there is no doubt that men have an advantage over women. If there was no advantage, they would not be coming up with different rules for transgender folks to try to compete against women.
Yeah, there you go. And all of the testing for testosterone and so on and so forth, they are not testing women for that. They are testing transgender women, not cis women, as Lia Thomas put it. Jason Rantz, thank you very much.